Hey Reef Builders, Evan Montgomery coming at you today from the home of Jake's brother, Luke Adams. We are here today to set up a Nano aquarium. Jake actually gifted this tank to Luke, what was that, maybe 6 months ago?
That's about right.
Gave it to you, yeah, a while ago. So it's been sitting in his garage for a little while, and today's the day we're finally going to get it wet. I've got a bucket of corals that I fragged out of the studio this morning, a little bit of a cleanup crew and some biomedia and stuff like that. Is this your first tank you've set up?
This is, I'd say, my second tank. I've had one other tank, and fortunately my brother helped do all of the setting up previously and maintaining, so.
He was always good at that.
He was, yeah. So this is my first by myself.
Yeah, so I think his kids will really enjoy having a Nano tank around here, and I think you guys will really enjoy following us along on kind of the saga of this tank. If you've watched our videos for a while, you will have seen our Red Sea Nano at the studio. This is more or less the same model, except I'm guessing looking at it, it probably holds about an extra 10 gallons over the one that we have at the studio. It's more of a peninsula kind of style tank. It's a little bit further front to back. It's a little bit deeper, as they'd say. Luke's already done kind of the hard part for us. He got the stand level. The tank's perfectly even. He did a little aquascape in here. What is that, 3 or 4 rocks?
Yeah, 3 rocks, and I actually watched Jake's tutorials on his previous videos, Reef Builders videos, on just setting up the live rock, which is, or the rock, I should say, which is a nice, handy tutorial.
And just looking at it, I think this aquascape is going to work out really well. For now, we're not going to have any flow pumps other than the return, so keeping a lot of open space in the tank is going to really help give those corals the flow that they really need. Down the road, you know, once the corals grow in, we will probably have to add like an MP10 or a gyre or some sort of other power head on this tank in the future. But for now, I think the return pump should provide adequate flow. Most of you are probably familiar with kind of the general layout of a Red Sea Nano tank, but in case you're not, I'm going to grab the camera here and just kind of show you what's going on behind the scenes, because there's no sump under here. All the filtration, protein skimmer, everything is handled in the back of the tank. So let's check that out real quick. So despite this tank actually being slightly larger than our Nano at the studio, the equipment that it comes with is pretty much the same. We've got the Reef 50 over the tank, which is controllable by the Reef app. I believe right now we have all channels running at 100%, so it definitely leans a little bit towards the blue end of the spectrum, but for a Reef tank, hey, that's kind of what we want after all. It actually comes, so let me fold down this little piece there. It actually comes with a built-in auto top-off reservoir, and if I pull that up, you can see there's a float valve. So this is a very simple solution. If you had a glass top on this tank, this would probably actually last you like a month or so, upwards of a month. Since we don't have a top on this tank right now, we're gonna want a little bit more of a reservoir. So we actually have an ATO Auto Aqua that we're gonna install on the back of this tank the same way as we have the Nano set up at the studio. Next to the top-off reservoir, we have the small protein skimmer. It's worth noting that everything on this tank, the return pump, the light, and the protein skimmer, all run off of one power cord, kind of fed into a hub back there, which is a super nice feature if you ask me. You know, I certainly have a rat's nest of wires behind my tank, so only having one thing to plug in is actually going to turn out to be really nice on this tank. The only thing that it did not come with is a heater, so we just ran over to Petco and picked up your basic kind of Aqueon heater. Other than that, down here in the back, we've got a section with a small filter sock in it. So I think once we get water flowing through this tank, I'm gonna go ahead and put some activated carbon in that filter sock just for the first day or two, just to clear up the water. One of my other favorite features about not just the Red Sea Nano tanks, but all the Red Sea tanks, including the large ones, is on the overflow teeth. You can see the groove here. You can actually remove the overflow teeth from this tank. So in our case, we have green star polyps that keep choking it up. But you know, if you got Valonia, coralline algae, whatever is clogging up your overflow teeth, I just think that's one of the best features of the Red Sea tanks, is the ability to actually remove the overflow teeth, take them over to the sink, and give them a proper cleaning instead of just trying to use like a toothbrush on the tank. All right, we're really excited to get this Red Sea Nano tank set up, get it wet, and get some corals in here today. We're not gonna do any fish, we're just gonna start off with corals. We got some biomedia that we're gonna just kind of let the tank get going before we put the fish in here. If you want more information about the Red Sea tanks in general, go back on this YouTube channel. We have a whole series of videos setting up a Red Sea Nano, and you can kind of follow the progression of that. So here's the random assortment of corals that I spent this morning fragging up for Luke. A lot of stuff that I actually pulled out of my home tank recently because I had to make a little more space in there. But I think this is a good selection. It's going to be enough coral to give the tank some good biology. Brought him a lot of pieces that Jake actually collected himself. Start over here, I've got a piece of, it's almost like a Spongotes, but it seems a little different to me. It's a Montipora. We have it in the Red Sea tank. Here's a bird's nest from my home tank. This thing was about the size of 2 basketballs put together, so just a small frag in my opinion. Some of my red Monty cap from my home tank that's actually been at the studio for a while. This one does, I just noticed, have a nudibranch or 2 on it, so I'm just going to cut off all that base skeleton and we're just going to keep the tips and maybe even put a little revive in a bucket and kind of give it a little swish. We have a standard red digitata. I know it does not look red in the video right now under this white light, but once we get it in the tank, you can kind of see its true colors. A green calastria. Next to it, we've got just a small frag of some Milka stylo. We're going to end up pretty much cutting off all of that dead skeleton and just saving the tips and gluing those in there. You know, there's some Valonia algae and stuff like that that we don't want in this brand new tank, so we're just going to take the tips off of that one. A piece of the Palauistrea that Jake collected himself off the Great Barrier Reef. A piece of the Tracy Morgan Gorgonian right there. Some crystal experiment, the Immortal Torch Acropora. I'm not sure the exact strain name on this torch, but it was a really nice pink tip. We had a bunch of it in our Euphilia tank, so figured I'd snag a couple polyps of that. The highly debated Hollywood Stunner Chalice here grows really fast. This is just a small piece out of the colony that overtook my entire home tank, so I'm sure it'll do the same down here. Down here at the bottom, we've got a digitata branch that is mostly taken over by green star polyps. We've got a bunch of pre-mixed salt water that I brought over from the studio in water jugs here, and without sand in the tank, we should be getting this tank filled up real quick. It shouldn't cloud up, obviously, because there's no sand. So we're going to get this tank filled up. We're going to install the heater and start putting some corals in here. Well, as you can see here, we've got the tank filled up with water, we've got the return pump running, we've got the skimmer running, and we haven't plugged in the heater yet because I just had a thought that the water jugs, the water from the jugs and the coral have been sitting in the same room for an hour or 2 now, and they're pretty much the same temperature. So before we plug the heater in, we'll go ahead and get the corals in here, and then once that's done, we'll plug the heater in and let the temperature slowly come up. So without further ado, I'm gonna be over here kind of trimming off some of the dead parts of some of these corals, getting algae off and dipping the ones that have some of the flatworms on them. There's no acro-eating flatworms or any really damaging flatworms that we have here. They're just kind of the nuisance brown planaria that seem to plague us all. But since we're setting up a new tank, we might as well start with as few of those as possible. So I'll be over here kind of cleaning up the corals and then handing them to Luke to glue in the tank. I also brought over in this bucket is one of the Polyp Lab bio bricks that we've had in a sump of one of our main tanks at the studio for a really long time. So this thing has some little tube worms and all kinds of stuff encrusted on it. We're not doing it so much for that, but since we are starting this tank with all dry rock, there's not a whole lot for bacteria in there. We didn't have a whole lot of coral bases or anything like that. You know, pretty much just clean tips. And around the sides here, you can also see I harvested about 10 or 12 stomatellas from our one of our coral flats this morning. There's not a whole lot in here for a cleanup crew to eat at this point, but I have a feeling within a couple of weeks there will be some diatoms and a little bit of growth happening in here. So having a cleanup crew of some sort is not going to hurt, and these little stomatellas don't require that much food. So whatever they can find to eat is going to be fine. And I imagine within a couple of weeks we're going to find a few fish for this tank also, and that'll kind of help get a little more nutrients or a little more food sources for the stomatellas. We're going to add some of this Microbacter Start XLM from Brightwell Aquatics. People have varying opinions on biological bacteria in bottles, but we've always had kind of good luck with this at the studio. So I think just putting in, we're probably just going to do half the dosage on this, but I think that's going to be better than nothing. All right, Luke, we got the system running here. We got a few corals placed in the tank. A lot of these are still down here on the bottom. You were saying that you want to spend some time with your wife and kids and try to figure out the exact placement. There's a few corals like the Immortal Tort and a pink tip torch coral here. There's a few things that I wanted to put in place that need higher light, or for example, this Hollywood Stunner chalice back here, I wanted to make sure it had plenty of room between it and other corals. So I made a few recommendations on spots to put a few of the corals, but he's gonna have some fun over the next few days, taking a lot of these loose frags. I gave him plenty of glue so that he can take his time and kind of make this tank exactly what he wants. But what do you think of it so far?
I'm excited, Evan. Like you said, my wife, she was involved helping set up the rock, and it was really nice just having her engaged to something that we could both share together and, you know, just see it grow. So we're really looking forward to it. And thanks for your help, Evan.
Yeah, totally. And this tank, I have to say, for being about an hour-old reef tank, does not look too shabby. We're gonna come back probably in a couple weeks for a part 2 on this video, a couple weeks or a month or so, something like that, where we're gonna go find some fish for this tank and just kind of see what the aquascape ends up being and how everything turned out. I think the next thing that Luke wants to do on this tank is to find a good screen top. We were looking at a few fish today and thinking about what we might want to get as far as fish for this tank, but basically our decision came down to there's no screen top made yet for this tank, and we don't want to buy a new fish just to find it on the floor tomorrow morning because it decided to take a field trip. We got the bio brick kind of tucked behind the back wall over here, so hopefully that adds a little bit of biological filtration, although without fish that we're feeding, there shouldn't be a whole lot of a nitrogen source in this tank. It should stay pretty clean, at least until we get some fish. I really can't wait until I get a chance to come back to Luke's house and see what this tank looks like after he and his wife get a lot of the corals mounted up. It's really cool that they have the opportunity to kind of paint with corals in the way that I've always enjoyed doing. So to bring a small nano tank into a new hobbyist's house is always a fun experience. Until the next update on this aquarium or whatever the next video ends up being, I want to remind all of you guys to go to Reefstock. You can visit reefstock.show for all of the information, but basically it's just a really cool aquarium conference. You get to meet a lot of cool people, really impressive vendors on the lineup this year. So if you're anywhere near Denver, Colorado, I highly encourage you to come out to Reefstock and check out a lot of really hot corals and some really cool gear.
Yeah, like Evan said, this is really exciting getting into this. I know my brother tried for decades to try to get me into it, and yeah, it's just I'm really looking forward to sharing this with my wife. And like Evan said, if you get a chance to go to Reefstock, you know, please do go. I think it's going to be a great show. And if you,
are you going to be there?
I do plan on being there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the last thing, there will be a raffle at Reefstock this year, and all the donations will be to go to Windsor and their little frag that they're expecting. So please do participate in the raffle.
Yep, absolutely. We hope to see everybody there. Well, Luke, this has been a really good time.
Thank you.
I think your tank's looking pretty good for day one.
I can't agree more.
Awesome. So don't forget to subscribe to the Reef Builders YouTube channel. If you like this video and you want to see more content like this, definitely hit that notification bell. Share this video with your friends. So until the next video, we'll talk to you real soon. Bye, guys.
See you guys.